I call the meeting to order. Please rise from the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The City of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall. Is it the north wall here?
It's actually on that table over there.
All right, it's on the table over there, as required. Disclosure of meeting recording process is also posted. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The City of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Kaler.
Here.
Coulterman.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Streisand.
Here.
Tonages. Wergen.
Here.
Wilkin.
Here.
All right, first 4 items this evening make up our consent agenda.
Move approved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes or roll call. I just read what's on here.
Kaler. Coulterman. Miller.
Yes.
Singleton.
Yes.
Streisand.
Yes.
Tanyas.
Yes.
Wergen.
Yes.
Wilkin.
Yes.
8-0.
All right, thank you. First administrative item this evening is consideration of a professional services agreement with Davis Design for design services related to the Seward Volunteer Fire Department location. Chief,
Oh, it's Dan.
Nope. Assistant Chief Brown.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Dan Brum, Seward, Nebraska, 622 North 4th, Assistant Chief. We're seeking the approval to work with Aaron Novesh, Senior Architect with Davis Designs out of Lincoln. Davis and Aaron were involved with the designs of Lincoln Fire Stations, most recently built. We want to begin planning for station expansion, updating, and possible addition of another building. Positioned to the north end of the block to be used for a museum-like space where we can store our Seagrave, postcard, historical memorabilia from Seward Fire, along with additional space that can be used for anything for training, department events. We have no specific plans at this time. We are discussing what our needs may be and how best to plan for the future. So that's what we're looking to do.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the council?
Move to approve.
Here, we get a motion. We have a motion to
Second.
approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Kaler. Coulterman.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Singleton.
Yes.
Streisand.
Yes.
Tanyas.
Yes.
Wergen.
Yes.
Wilkin.
Yes.
8-0.
That wasn't too painful, was it?
That's fine.
Thank you. Item number 2, consideration of the speed bump on East Seward Street. Greg.
Yes, in your packet, you received a petition. We use that term lightly in this. Again, it's kind of a show of support of a request by residents in the eastern portion of the city of Seward, predominantly Ridge Run, but also areas that even include areas of the county. They're not Ridge Run. Approximately 140 signatures, numerous multi-signatures from different families and households. We won't go to the specifics, and I think we probably have a representative of the petitioners. Upon receiving the petition, I did contact Marcia Carl, who's our predominant contact for the petition that we received earlier, a year ago, for installation of the East Seward Street speed bump. And so I did let Marcia know that we had received this. She had kind of heard through the grapevine that it was coming. I provided a copy, and then we get into all the details about the items that were requested and things like that. But I think we have representatives tonight and plenty of guests with us to discuss the matter, but I can answer any specific questions about what the city did or handled before we get into the discussion, and probably let the petitioners at least go first.
And just to reiterate what Greg was saying, you know, we don't have a formal petition process, so if groups want to do a petition for something, they're welcome to do that to show support for a particular issue, but it doesn't automatically trigger anything like it would at the state level, for example. And so, but we wanted to provide that to everyone so you could see what was presented to us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions from the council before opening it up to the public for comment. Does council have any questions or comments at this time? If not, who did you have on the petition?
I can't see everybody's faces, I'm so far away. Kim, do you have someone specific that would like to speak first on behalf of the petition? All right, Doug, come forward. Name and address for the record. And we do have a 5-minute limit for all of our
Gotcha. Well, I'm not
speakers
gonna,
tonight.
I'm not gonna take long. So.
Okay.
Doug Feewald, 142 Goldenrod. I am representing the Ridge Run Homeowners Association. We put together a petition or signature drive to see if we can get the speed bump removed. We do have approximately 140 signatures. Just looking at it, you know, when the speed bump went in, it really set a precedent that anybody who had concerns around the community about speed limits in town could, you know, petition and get a speed bump put in. It identifies that block as dangerous, which it can be, and that's one of our concerns, is that the safety of having that speed bump there, especially with it being a narrow road. In the winter, when it gets icy, it creates traffic issues, traffic jams down in that area, and so that is a big concern. Impedes the normal traffic flow. You know, most of us law-abiding citizens that are traveling the speed limit are having to slow down to 0 and then speed back up and go back up the hill or down the hill. I know with the brakes there, it seems like you're going a lot faster than you probably are. So our signatures came from Ridge Run, you know, Valley View, even Plum Creek Circle over there, and a few from the other side of town. So it's not just our neighborhood that would like it removed. There's multiple people. And you know, the biggest thing is it's a traffic enforcement issue, and I know we can't have a police officer stationed down at the bottom of that hill 24/7. But I really do think that setting a precedent on installing a speed bump when there is a concern about speed is not the way to go about it. We should look at our enforcement, how that's being enforced, and really as a community, just making sure we're looking out for each other. So that is my time.
And just for a matter of procedure, once you had your opportunity to speak, we don't have rebuttals, we don't have people come back up. If there's someone else in your group that would like to respond to something later, they sure can, but it's just for one opportunity. Otherwise, we'll turn into a debate class.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's really, I wanted to keep it short and sweet, so that's really what, you know, what's on the petition is what our major concerns are.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you. Do you have anyone else?
Nobody planned. Again, you could ask, I'm assuming that Marshall will speak, so we could have her go next just to balance it out, but
Yeah, that's fine. Welcome.
My name is Marcia Carl. I live at 194 East Seward Street. Mayor, members of the council, I'm speaking in support of retaining the speed bump as it helps regulate speed and serves as a safety measure on our street. As for setting a precedent, this is a unique situation. This is a narrow brick residential street supporting in excess of 800 vehicles a day. This will greatly increase with the addition of Prairie View. It has turned into a major thoroughfare. The intersection slowing here anyway. But it seems the right-of-way rule does not exist. The speed bump creates a safer intersection. Requests for police presence to control speed during high traffic times have repeatedly been made but never offered. Speed limit signs are posted but can easily be ignored. It is difficult to ignore a speed bump. However, some traffic does drive over it like it doesn't exist, which could lead to a vehicle maintenance issue. It takes but a few seconds to slow down and cross. If this is such a nuisance, there are other routes available. We are asking for your respect and concern for the safety of our street and retention of the speed bump.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward and speak at this time? Please do so.
I think I have it, we're good.
Joe Mazurek, 140 East Seward, Mayor, City Council. This speed bump has actually not been there even a full year. I'm not sure about the amount of months that it's been there, but it has already greatly reduced the amount of people speeding up and down that hill. Now, we understand that it's very, very hard to post law enforcement in that area, because that's been brought up, even with the shortage of police officers, that when this was just an idea in its infancy, we knew that we were short patrolmen. We also know, though, that no matter how law-abiding people are, there comes that idea that who's watching, who cares, so I'm going a little bit over. So that's one of the reasons why we even have law enforcement, because no matter how law-abiding you are, you slip up. And the thing is, with this speed bump in place, it at least makes people think. So while you're driving down the road and you're putting on your makeup, on your cell phone, doing that PowerPoint presentation, all of a sudden you come up to the speed bump and you slow down. And then all of a sudden it should trigger something in the average brain that says, you know, this is a 25, or this is whatever the posted limit is. And up until this point, because we are getting results with this, no matter how minor they are results. And it's true, we have a very, very heavy volume of traffic down that street, and we know that even people who have sat there and done traffic studies have marked down as side notes saying, you know, there's a lot of speeders here. So this is not a concern that, you know, a bunch of neighbors that just want to be, you know, a-holes about this. This is a legitimate beef and a legitimate thing that the city has got to, well, it's got to basically come up with a solution for this, because we are growing. And when we're growing, this is not going to go away, it's going to get worse. So once again, the police department, someone has got to come up with a solution on this, to sort of get this going. Because this is not you against me, this is more of a problem that's got to be solved. And actually that little speed bump, no matter what kind of a nuisance it is, and by the way, it's a nuisance to us too, it's working. And, you know, we're pro in keeping it until we find a solution. Because that's one of the reasons why it's there. Because we have to come up with something, and we have to put in an actual barrier, because we didn't have another means of doing that. So hopefully that, you know, the council will understand that, and, you know, we could come up with a solution for this thing. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wish to address the council? Welcome.
Sorry, I'm short, so can you hear me okay? Okay. Hello, I am Emily O'Brien. I live at 236 East Seward Street, and I am strongly in favor of keeping the speed bump in place. I have 3 young children. Odds are, if it's remotely nice outside, you're going to see them riding bikes or scooters in front of our house, drawing with chalk in our driveway, and playing fetch with their dog. They love playing outside, as children should. Prior to the speed bump being in place, letting them play outside was incredibly nerve-wracking. It was unbelievable how fast cars would go up and down our hill. My husband and I tried to take action. We bought and set out several signs that said things like, "Please slow down," or "Children playing." I would even place a large shiny pinwheel next to the signs to draw extra attention. It did no good. I literally started screaming, "Slow down," to speeders, and my children followed suit. We were literally pleading as loud as we could for drivers to just slow down. Since the addition of the speed bump, we have noticed a drastic positive change. Sure, there are the occasional drivers that continue to zoom over the bump, but it's absolutely nothing like it was before. I am so grateful the speed bump was installed. Thank you for listening to the concerns of our street and actually taking steps to help us last spring. As you're aware, East Seward Street is also close to the bike trail. It's very common to see several people, and not just the residents of our block, walking or biking our hill daily, en route to and from the trail. Often, young families are trying to cross East Seward with not only strollers, but other children trailing behind them. Before the bump was in place, it could be a challenge for them to get everybody across the street safely. Traffic would not slow down for them. And honestly, I'm not sure that a car could have stopped quickly enough if needed at the rates they used to come down the hill. The speed bump has made a difference there too. I understand the speed bump could feel like an inconvenience to some. However, all of the residents that signed the petition against the speed bump do not have to drive over it to get home. They could easily opt to take Jackson and Lindell, bypassing the bump. They could also take the highway and Evergreen, bypassing the bump. They have options, multiple options. Several people on our block are near their homes the majority of the day. They might be stay-at-home parents like myself, retired, or work remotely. We see and experience the benefits of the speed bump our entire day. Those that choose to drive over it when they could easily go another route are only affected by the bump for literally a second of their commute. The residents of East Seward Street are impacted the most when it comes to the issue of speeding on our hill. Yet it feels like we have to scream for you to hear us. Putting a minor convenience over the safety of others is not only absurd, it's selfish. Please keep the speed bump in place. It makes a difference. Thank you.
Any questions? Anyone else wishing to address the council, please come forward at this time.
Hi, I'm Leanne Lowther. I live at 214 East Seward Street. My home's pretty much about 30 steps away from the speed bump. I live at the bottom of the hill. I don't know how quickly you can speed down the bottom of the hill. I have to stop to go into my driveway, so I slow down. Many people don't. I'm not going to reiterate what my neighbors have said, but I do want to give you a little perspective. I've lived there 23 years, and the last 3 years I've worked from home. And I made an observation last spring before that speed bump went in. Had the windows open, working from home. I'm like, do I live on a highway? Cars are flying down the hill and repeated like nonstop. And this is during the high traffic hours. It's not all day, but there's way more traffic than there was 23 years ago. I did not choose 23 years ago to live on a high traffic street. It's a concern. And the concern is built over the 23 years. We've had growth in our community, which is wonderful. But there's not enough roads yet to get people to go north-south. So our street's the main avenue. Traffic's increased, and now you're gonna build another 340 houses out there. Traffic's gonna increase, which is why the East Seward Street residents put together the petition for a speed bump last year. But today, there's a petition requesting for the removal of the speed bump. And I'd like to address the reasons noted on the petition. I just The first one is the structure sets a precedence for additional residents to request the same place in an area of concern, and I guess I've heard this before, and I just don't understand why this is a reason. If someone else in the town has a concern on their street, I mean, why not consider it? Why couldn't they come to you and ask for a speed bump? I don't understand why we don't want to keep our community safe. Inconsistently identifies exactly one block in Seward as more dangerous than any other street in the area. If you look, I believe Marcia sent you a traffic counter report that was done a year ago. Practically 800 cars or more a day. At the bottom, lots of speeders was circled and starred. So I think East Seward Street's not like, it is a more dangerous street than others in the area. So, impedes normal traffic flow or an irritant or nuisance to responsible law-abiding drivers. Well, we wouldn't be here today if the drivers on East Seward Street were law-abiding all the time. There's definitely a speed issue. We've tried to lower the speed limit. They're not law-abiding. I don't feel a bump impedes normal traffic flow. I think it actually helps with the traffic flow. As my neighbors have said, we've seen improvement. We've seen traffic slow down. We've seen less traffic on our street because people want to avoid the speed bumps. I avoid areas in Lincoln because I don't like them. Are they a nuisance? Are they an irritant? Yes. The speed bumps in the high school parking lot and on the way to middle school are a nuisance and an irritant to me, but I slow down. I know why they're there. They're there for safety reasons. You know, I have to practically stop to go over and my car will bottom out on them. So I understand that. The structure is aggressive and potentially a vehicle maintenance hazard. Again, if you slow down enough, go over it slowly, I think your car's gonna be okay. You know, I have to do it when I go, anytime I go to any of the schools. Traffic speed should be regulated by random placement, should not be regulated by random placement of speed bumps throughout the community as requested by concerned homeowners. Why not? I mean, I don't understand why that's a reason. According to the Federal Highway Administration website, speed bumps are well suited for streets with speed limits below 35 miles an hour. They are generally located on residential streets or other low-speed roads. These structures force motorists to slow down to safe speeds. Studies have shown the effect can reduce speeds to by nearly 10 miles per hour. SouthernAsphaltEngineering.com. Speed bumps are more effective in reducing speed than speed limit signs. They're more cost-effective than hiring a traffic cop to enforce speed limits. Installing speed bumps can result in 40% reduction in speed, helping to prevent speed-related accidents. And their final reasoning is traffic speed should be regulated by city speed limits and signage enforced by the Seward Police Department consistently throughout the city. Again, we're all aware that, because I've brought this up, I've talked to the chief of police about it. They're limited in where they can cover things. That's not a priority. Nothing against our police department, but it's a great thought. I just think it's an unrealistic reason. So keeping the speed bump on East Seward Street just makes good common sense for the safety and well-being of all who live and travel on East Seward Street daily. I feel removing it would be a travesty. It would increase the chances for accidents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this issue, please come forward. Welcome.
I'm Luke Breeze, live at 141 East Seward Street. My neighbors are pretty much taking care of it, so I apologize for anything that's repetitive. But I'm kind of going to go point by point. The structure sets a precedent for other residents to place stuff in their area of concern. If we're worried about setting precedents, there's a roundabout right up the street from us. Not everybody gets a roundabout. So if we're going to remove the speed bump, anybody that signed that petition must be for removing the roundabout. It's not just everybody gets a roundabout. If you're worried about precedents, I don't think there's been stop signs placed without a whole lot of, just because somebody requested it. And so, okay, you want to pull a speed bump, put a stop sign. Putting a stop sign there supposedly takes care of everything on this list. So if everybody on this list legitimately just doesn't like the speed bump, then they're gonna love a stop sign. But if the reality is they just want the thoroughfare, then they're gonna be irritated with the stop sign too. So just put it to the smell test. Inconsistently identifies exactly one block in Seward Street is more dangerous, and that's been gone over. It is, and you guys have identified it as that, and it's gonna get more dangerous as time goes on. Mayor, you said in one meeting that John Hughes years ago mentioned that there's a storm coming. I mean, this is gonna be a problem, okay? So you guys know there's even more of a problem going, and it's not your fault where things are at, but going forward, good leadership would take the initiative and get ahead of it. So you guys have taken one step forward. Good leadership does not retreat from their responsibilities. Seward Street is safer because of that bump. There's no doubt about that. People that are home during the day, out in the yard with their kids, the people that are there all the time, not just someone driving by and looking, they know for a fact, 100%, our street is safer because that bump is there. If you remove it, or why? Because it's an irritant and a nuisance, really? I mean, and yeah, it is. You drive up to the schools, it's a nuisance and an irritant for a reason, so you slow down. Calling it aggressive, I've never seen that speed bump chase anybody down. I've never seen it do anything, it just lays there. The only thing that can happen there is somebody behind the wheel is driving aggressively and hits it at an aggressive rate of speed, and that could damage their vehicle. But that makes no sense to me. And it's not random placement, it was extremely directed placement. I mean, I don't know where that one comes from. And as far as being regulated in the law enforcement, everybody's been over that, but law enforcement cannot be everywhere all the time. They should not be expected to be. And Seward Street is a terrible street to try because it's narrow. I mean, they can sit at the bottom of the street so people can see them, slow down when they're there, then they're gone and people will take off. Now, I've been there for 25 years. Speeding has always been an issue. It's not, I'm not gonna say it's not the fault of the driver, but gravity has a whole lot to do with it. Even when there wasn't a neighborhood out there to speak of, even when that was closed, people go in cul-de-sac. People don't pay attention. Sometimes I take off from my curve heading out that way. I will speed, because if you're not feathering the brake, you're gonna speed going downhill. It's just the way it is. And so it's not that people are terrible, it's just they've got a lot going on. Gravity gets the best of them, things get the best of them, and they speed. It's not all the time, I'm not saying everybody's breaking the law, but even a small percentage of that many people, and as it increases, that's gonna be more people speeding. Doesn't matter what you do, even with the speed bump, our neighborhood's more dangerous by far than it was 10 years ago. We have to accept that. When we did that petition and you fill out different things, like closing the street was an option. I don't think anybody on my street voted for closing the street, although that would fix it perfectly for us because, as was said, we just want the community to come together and look out for each other. Well, that's what we're talking about here. I mean, we're not saying they can't come up and down our street because it's our neighborhood, but it's not our street. It's everybody's street. We're just saying everybody should work together for the greater good and to protect the kids above all else. And if that speed bump goes and you don't immediately replace it with something else, you're saying, hey, even though we know for 100% fact we've got a problem here, we knew this problem was coming for a long time, and we took a little step forward, we're giving that back. We do not care about the safety of those children on Seward Street. And when the media comes out, and they're like, oh, there was an accident, and they're like, okay, you voted to remove that speed bump. Which one of these did you think was more important than the safety of that child? That's all I got. Thanks.
Any questions from the council? Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? speak on this issue, please come forward. Welcome.
Tom O'Brien, 236 East Seward Street. I just want to start by kind of echoing the comments of my wife Emily was up with a couple speakers previously that we've definitely seen great improvement on our street when it comes to the rate of speed that traffic is traveling since that speed bump has been put in place. And I just want to thank the council and you guys for taking action on hearing our concern there, because it gives me, parent of 3 kids, a lot of peace of mind to know that those cars are slowing down now. A lot of what I was going to say has already been addressed, but there were a few points on the petition that also stood out to me. When it comes to setting the precedent, yes, speed bump sets the precedent. I think it's a good precedent that we want to have in our community, that the safety of our residents and kids is important. But obviously the precedent they're worried about is that this will lead to more residents requesting speed bumps. I know at the time that the speed bump was considered, I believe anyway that wasn't a concern, that there were at that time no other requests for anything like this in recent history. So I assume this council would have the best knowledge of whether that is a legitimate concern or not. Also around this, the point that this inconsistently identifies exactly one block in Seward as more dangerous. I would say that it correctly identifies one block in Seward as more dangerous. For the reasons stated, really with the topography of that area, and namely the slope of that hill. Prior to that speed bump, you had to be riding the brake. If you were just simply coasting down that hill, you're easily going 35 miles an hour or more by the time you get to the bottom where my house is. And in the reverse direction, it seemed the same way, where people would be coming across the bridge and just letting the hill slow them down, so they were again going at a high rate of speed in both directions. So that's been a huge improvement. My last point, with the last 2 points on the petition around traffic speed should not be regulated by speed bump, I could agree with that, but I really think for the city of Seward and the best use of the resources, the speed bump is by far the best use of resources to consistently and reliably control the speed on East Seward Street. And so, yeah, for all those reasons, I think we should keep it in place, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening, please come forward at this time.
Kim Clark, 100 Goldenrod Lane. So you've heard many reasons to keep the speed bump, many reasons to have it removed. I guess one of the reasons I wanted to point out was to keep the speed bump. They stated several times about speed on that street. If anyone's driven on East Seward Street within the last month, or really any time in the last year, you've noticed that the condition of the street really doesn't allow anyone to drive this street at a normal speed limit, between the roughness of the road, the heaving of the bricks, the potholes that are present, the heaving of the concrete. And so it is challenging to even drive the speed limit, because you do have to use your brakes to avoid some of those impediments that we could potentially see. There's also typically vehicles that are parked along the side of the road, and so that slows down traffic as well. In a professional engineer's opinion, they stated speed bumps are limited to local streets and parking lots, so we would like to see that. With East Seward Street being a collector street, it is just that, a collector street. And the traffic counts that they've had In 2017, 2019, 2021, when you look at the NDOT traffic counts, they are still under collector street numbers for traffic flow. So we're still within, although traffic counts being 800 vehicles per day, that still falls within a range of a collector street. Also in the professional engineer's opinion, they state the roughness of the street and the narrow width of the road already slow traffic. So that's something to keep in mind as well. We've heard several times this evening about the heavy volume of traffic, that drivers of East Seward Street can use other routes. I have to stop and ask myself, is speed really the issue? For the reasons I stated when I started talking, I'm not sure speed is the issue. I have to stop and ask myself, what is the underlying issue here? I think the issue here is traffic. And the residents of East Seward Street want to keep the numbers of traffic down on the street. We've heard that multiple times, heavy traffic volume, using other routes if the speed bump is an issue. So I would like to ask the city and the council to consider burying the power lines and widening that road and even paving it. It's a collector street. It needs to be viewed as a collector street. And so while we're talking about the speed bump, I think there's an underlying issue here that maybe hasn't been stated directly by some, but I think when I stop and ask myself, that might be the underlying issue. So that is what I have. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Jessica?
When you, maybe you can talk to this and maybe answer for some of your neighbors, do people, to your knowledge, avoid taking the street because of the speed bump?
I will speak on my behalf. The path and route I take to get into Seward, from where I live on East Seward, or on the east side of town, depends on what part of the city I'm going to. The kids go to school on the north side, I work on the north side, so I take East Seward Street. Drivers that are going toward Lincoln, I would imagine that they would take alternate routes. If they are going
But
to.
you don't go typically, okay, I'm gonna go out to the highway and around to take the kids to school or to head to Concordia.
I do not. Nope, I take East Seward Street. Yep. Yeah.
Any other questions? Think none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the council, please come forward this time. Welcome.
Francis Swain, I'm at 1442 Ridge Run. I lived in that area for about the last 2 years, and great neighbors. Appreciate everyone's support tonight for the issue. I do believe the bigger issue is the street itself. You need to address that as a collector and deal with that. I also agree that, you know, there is a huge situation here. The thing we're calling a speed bump is not a speed bump, it's an obstacle. It's a very dangerous obstacle. The vehicles I drive, I have to be able to stop to go over that. I've almost been rear-ended once, someone coming up behind me. Drive a motorcycle, you try to drive a motorcycle 25 miles an hour over that speed bump and you've got to have a dirt bike. You're gonna have an accident. Anyone wants to join me in any of my vehicles and drive them down the street, you cannot get up to 25 miles an hour on the street just because of the condition of the street. And so I implore you, I take all the time in the world to discuss that, to walk the street with you, to drive it. It's an issue, and we need to address it. So, to be more blunt, I think it's to a point where we're gonna have to take legal action if it's not removed. It's just, it's dangerous, very dangerous. Question, I'm sorry.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have the same question for you. In your experience, do you ever go out and around and avoid Seward Street to get into town?
On a motorcycle, I will because it's a dangerous point to go over. I have some collector cars, and it's 50-50. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. The speed bump certainly deters me, and I'm not sure why. I have to go around when I'm a tax-paying citizen and a lot of property taxes in Nebraska. Why can't I drive down the street that I want to drive down?
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the council? Please come forward at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hey, Mike, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. Could you come forward for a second? I had a couple of questions. I should probably give you a heads up.
That's
so I apologize.
That's fine.
So I'm just trying to understand, like, as far as the traffic count brought up tonight, and they mentioned it being a collector street. I know we've talked in the past about maybe changing that designation possibly. What's the count if it were like a local street,
The,
the threshold?
the threshold stated in our ordinance, which is, somewhat arbitrary, is 250 to 1,000.
That's not real helpful.
I'm sorry, average daily traffic, which will be essentially the number of vehicles that pass by a certain point within a 24-hour period of time.
I got you.
So the Federal Association of American Highway Traffic Officials, the state government, federal government, do not recognize ADT, average daily traffic, as a design guideline for street hierarchy. They do not. So it's just one element of many for how the roads are designated. The state designates the East Seward Street as a collector and all of our streets as within the range of that hierarchy. The state makes that determination.
So we don't get to make that determination, the state does.
The state has made it, yes. And so local authorities have the ability to appeal, and there's a board that would then hold a hearing and render a decision. And that's how that process would work.
As far as other, we talked about the issue of precedent has come up. Have we had requests for other speed bumps since you've been here?
I have not heard any formal requests for another speed bump elsewhere.
Have you, as an engineer, ever recommended a speed bump on the road?
I have not.
Is that just because the situation hasn't presented itself, or is that more of a philosophy or a guideline? I'm sure it's that it's never come up in my professional career. I've never had to make decisions, so. That's all. Anyone else have any questions for Mike while I drag him up here?
Just maybe not a question, more of a comment. I think the city taxpayers are working over quite a bit to improve East Seward Street, and Prairie Flower will be a new paved entrance to Highway 34. And that's in process, right?
Correct.
And also Highway 15 getting fixed and being a lot more user-friendly in the next few years is in process, and the taxpayer is going to improve the storm drainage around the road and work on that. So I guess where I'm going with that, it'll be more beneficial to maybe go north and south through town on Highway 15 and more attractive than Columbia. Would that be a fair assumption? So I guess the comment of previous councils and previous taxpayers, trying to find a better north-south route, trying to work with Nebraska DOT to get Highway 15 fixed and get a better access to Highway 34 that maybe a lot of people will use with Prairie Flower. I would just like to state that I think there's been a little bit of planning and forethought by previous councils, so I didn't know if that makes sense to the rest of the council.
I think part of that is the hope. I think it's kind of like the old idea that when you build a campus, you don't put in sidewalks. You wait to see where everybody walks, and then where the paths are, that's where you put the sidewalks because it's intuitive. I mean, our hope would be is that as we improve more streets wherever they are, that they will get used and utilized more. And we did this with Carroll K, and I've had more people, of any project we've done with streets, that's the one that I've had most people say they use it a lot and they're glad it's there. So I can't predict that Prairie Flower will move more traffic around until it's in place. We would do a traffic count potentially after the fact, but ultimately it's up to the residents as to what they view as the most expedient or efficient or convenient route from their home to wherever they're going and back. And so I think what you're saying is, you know, I would believe that could be true. We won't know until we get the numbers, but that would be my hope, that eventually that would be more, would make more sense for them, for the people that live up there to go that route. Any other, Matt, you good?
No.
Matt or Mike, do you want to kind of just cover what the purpose of a collector street is, just so we're clear on that?
So there's a road hierarchy. There's a different level of hierarchy depending if you're following the federal guidelines, the state guidelines, or local. We've created our own. The local, essentially, they all have the same local. Essentially, the local streets connect individual houses in a particular block, and they may be several blocks in multiple directions. It's part of a circulation system and network. Collector Street is the next higher classification in that hierarchy, and essentially connects residences with businesses, business districts, schools, places that people travel from their homes to and back from. And so then there's minor arterial, major arterial, and highway. And we have, the state classification is very similar. They grade it a little differently than we have. And then so each has a different design guideline. So as you go up in hierarchy, you're designing for higher speeds and more traffic. And so between the local, the collector, minor and major arterial, there's roughly a 5 mile per hour, as an example, design speed difference between those two. And there's a lot of elements that go into circulation system design, so there's different parameters that change depending on how you design it out.
All right, so the main point of a collector is you're taking those local streets and being able to connect them to either a major arterial for faster travel across town or to businesses in town.
That's correct.
I do have another question.
Yes, Jessica?
One of the challenges, I think the first time we talked about this was trucks.
Yes.
Trucks on the street. From your observation and conversations, has that improved?
Trucks on East Seward specifically. During our traffic counts, we had a manual count, and we had on 5 occasions somebody sitting in a pickup truck for 2 hours, and 5 separate times, and they did not count 1 truck in that period of time. I would anticipate, based on the data, trucks represent less than 1% of the vehicular traffic on East Seward. So not really a problem per se.
My guess is the perception, just because it's brick, driving on brick, it tends to be louder.
Yeah, certainly.
And imagine with the truck, you probably notice it every time. I mean, I grew up on North Columbia. I can tell you how loud that gets. So I imagine it's probably, the perception may be a little skewed, just because when they do go down there, I'm sure it makes a lot of racket. I mean, it's pretty loud.
So I've witnessed it a few times. I traveled East Seward. I witnessed full truck, 18-wheel tractor trailers traveling up and down several times, as my colleagues. So it does happen. It's just infrequent.
Any other questions from the council? Yes.
Not for Mike, but maybe the fire department and the trucks, those things. Coming up and down.
Is this?
Is it easy to
No.
navigate, hard?
Well, I probably just directed to.
John?
Yes. So going
say go around, like what route are you taking?
You take Highway 34.
34, Evergreen, probably usually done. It's so much easier to handle, especially with a ladder truck. Ladder truck, and if you have parked cars on the side, we can't get around. So it's so much safer to go all around. Faster, safer.
But the speed bump wouldn't
Speed bump,
necessarily.
it says, we don't even bring it up, and we've directed everybody not to even go down that street.
Okay.
Plus, you could potentially do damage to your trucks underneath, it's low. Bumpers and step sides and diesel exhaust underneath them, is potential damage. So it's easier to just tell everybody, go around, unless it's on the street, so.
Anything else? John?
What examples of other collector streets?
Surely we do. So, East Seward, Ash Street on the south side of town, South Columbia, from the highway to Ash. Moffett, from Highway 15 to Columbia. And Pinewood, from Highway 15 to Carroll K. Also, the new section of Waverly Road, east of Carroll K to the city limits. And those are our designated collector streets.
I think part of what makes that Easter Street unique is that, I mean, originally it was the main route into town for the most part from the east, I mean, way back before the highway. I mean, we have old maps that show that as the entrance, and I think being that, you know, of the other streets that you mentioned, they were designed later, much later. And so you could accommodate the width, and you could accommodate whether you went parking or not parking, or how you, whether it's brick or whether it's paved. This particular, the brick portion of East Seward Street, you know, is kind of an anomaly in the sense that it wasn't part of a later design with that in mind. It was, I think, just the original, from what I can tell, the original route in Seward, unless I'm mistaken. But that's the maps that I've seen going back to the 1800s, before Highway 34 and everything else came into play. But no, it's good to know. Any other questions from the council or comments? I probably owe you a drink, so thanks for coming out.
Happy to come in.
I guess the only other question I had is if we had any information from the police department, if they had anything they wanted to share about enforcement on the street.
Well, I know we had a traffic, an accident count, right,
That was in, I think, an email.
we talked about accidents.
Chief, sir. Chief, you wanna come up?
Chief Peters, can we bother you for 1 second?